the 5 themes of geography today. This will kind of give us an idea of some things around us and why and where they are. And also, it will take a look at some things that we're going to really kind of touch on all year long. So please take notes on this lecture. And if you have any questions, please let me know. When you look at this, we see there's a house. What we need to think about with the 5 themes of location, or 5 themes of geography, is the fact that this is a location. And something that makes it a location is the fact that it's where a place is on Earth. Where is it? If you look at this particular home, you can figure out a location or part of a location due to the house address or the house number. We don't know exactly what street it's on or anything, but we know that it's a place on Earth, okay, because of where it is located. So it is location is a first theme of geography. You know, a location could be anything or anywhere, as far as like it could be Spring Valley, it could be Columbia, South Carolina. But a location is where a place is on Earth and where it is at. These are terms we're going to be using all year long. There's differences between location and place, and I'm going to show you that right now. With location, though, there are 2 separate forms of location, and the first one is absolute location. And absolute location is the exact location of a place on Earth. And one way that you can show exact location of a place on Earth is through longitude and latitude. I know we haven't necessarily talked about that those terms, longitude and latitude, but that's the grid system that kind of chunks up the Earth. That it's imaginary, it's not real, it's completely man-made, but it's something that we use to help us find precise locations on Earth. Another form of absolute location is honestly an address. Richland Northeast High School is located at 7500 Brookfield Road, Columbia, South Carolina, 29223. There is nothing else located at that address on the Earth, and so it is another form of absolute location. The other form of location is relative location, and we have talked about relative location or relative ideas, like with relative scale, we've talked about it, but now let's talk about relative location. Relative location is the location of a place in relation to another place. For example, the 2 examples I have are on the screen. The Grand Hotel is near the Yanshan Station, or Brazil is on the South American continent. So it is an idea of something is near or next to or close to or around something else. And so let's take a look at that locally. If we talk about Richland Northeast, we could say Richland Northeast is off of Decker Boulevard. Richland Northeast is next to, I believe there's a dentist's office or something next to it. But you could give a relative location, and you can even go a little larger than that. You could say Richland Northeast is in Columbia. That's a relative location because you're not giving the precise location, but you're giving some boundaries or some type of item that is close by that can kind of pinpoint where that item is. So if you were to take a look at this, go ahead and as you're watching, just kind of describe the relative location of the United States in a complete sentence. You can write it down in your notes. You can just think about it. Just think about what is that relative location. Next, you see here a picture. You see water. You see white stone buildings with blue, very bright blue tops on their roofs on them. This is an indication of place. This gives us an idea of where this could be. And maybe you automatically thought about the Mediterranean Sea. And when we think about things about what is it like there? So what is it like in Greece? What is it like in the Mediterranean Sea? Think about the special traits or qualities that are in those areas, and you can then create that idea of place. And when we look at place, we're looking at two different qualities or traits. We're looking at human or physical. Okay. And so, again, this is the second theme of place. When we look at these photos, hopefully you notice there are humans in the photos. So we're looking specifically at human place. And human place offers things like holidays, languages, customs, clothing, political ideas, architecture, things that are man made, things that create us as who we are. You'll notice the picture in the top left is a picture of a woman in Carnival. Her bright colors, the gold, all of that is a symbol of the culture of Carnival. If you look at the picture in the top right, it's a picture of young adults that are a part of the punk movement in England. Again, their hair, their makeup, their clothing all show us what they are about. Okay. And then finally, the picture in the bottom right is an Aboriginal woman in Australia, lives in the outback. Again, you can look at the markings on her face, her clothing, the way her hair is. All of those things lead you down the cultural aspect of what an Aboriginal person is. If you were with that person, you could look at where they live, you could look at how they do things, how they celebrate, how they speak. All of those items would be a part of human place. When we look at physical place, we're looking at landforms, animals, plants, waterways, the climate. You can see in these two photos, two very different photos, the top picture is actually a river in Africa. And you may not think of Africa being or having lush areas with rivers and such, but it does. And so we've got to think about those items as we look at place. Okay, the bottom photo you can see mountains and some water off in the distance, and so you see it's along a shoreline somewhere. Okay, and these items of this physical place are directly related to how human place works. So we are we develop habits, cultures, customs, and so on based on where we live because of the conditions of where we live. If you look at this photo, it is some type of farming, and it's on a hillside. And when you look at the ideas of themes of geography, people are dependent upon the environment, and we call that human environment interaction. And we're dependent upon the environment in a lot of different ways. And sometimes we have to change that environment. As you can see by farming, we're changing the way the environment looks here. It wasn't naturally these, I would say that's probably tea or something in rows that was planted there and formed in that environment. When we think about how we interact with the environment, we can modify the environment. Okay, so we have taken this area of the West and we have modified that environment by adding a road so that we can move through this environment. Okay, we can also adapt to the environment. Think about it. In the summer, we wear shorts and t-shirts and bathing suits and walk around barefoot or flip-flops. And in the winter, we might wear jeans or hoodies or, a coat. So we also live in air condition. We wouldn't be able to really be in these buildings very much throughout the summer if we didn't have air conditioning, and likewise if we didn't have heat in the winter. And so that is a way that we adapt to our environment, and that is a part of human environment interaction. Okay, so we are adapting to our environment and we are also changing our environment. We will talk about the Lorax later. But if you would like to, you can just look up on YouTube about the Lorax and how it is an example of human environment interaction. So, one of the things that we do, and we've talked about these words a little bit already, is the idea of thinking like a geographer. And when we think like a geographer, we have to essentially look at spatial ideas, again, looking at things in an area. And the geographic meaning is of or pertaining to a space. So, what are those things in an area or a space that we're looking at? And, how do those items influence you? How does it influence the people in that area? How do you influence it? Are some things that we think about. And when we talk about a zone of influence, the closer you are to something, the more your influence has on you. For example, maybe there is a relative that you're really close to. You may try to do some of the same things that person does. Maybe you want to grow up to do the same job as they do, or maybe you want to dress like they do. And then also, we are also influenced by the environment in which we live on. And that is not only the physical environment of the earth, but also the belief systems in our house. And all of these are related to human environment interaction because it causes us to either adapt to the world that we're living in or change or modify the world we're living in. Now, the movement of people or goods as well as ideas. So let's take a little deeper look into this. Let's start with the ideas portion. Um, when we exchange information or ideas, it is a form of movement because the knowledge goes from one person to the next. And that knowledge can be shared through the internet, social media, books, magazines, talking. A teacher teaching children is another form of an exchange of information. So it's anytime those informations move from one place to another or one person to another that help with the idea of movement. And then also, as I mentioned before, people are goods. Physical movement, like people going to work, people moving from one house to another, cargo ships. Coming in with new cargo or new things to sell, trucks, cars, planes, things on the internet, moving goods from one place to the other. All of that is a part of the geographic term movement. The fifth theme is region, and we've touched a little bit on region in class before. This is an example of climate regions on this map. And with regions, there are three different types. And we're going to take a look at three different types, and then there's going to be a video for you to watch to go over those three types as well, to go into a little bit more in-depth knowledge about them. And when we talk about regions, we're talking about an area of land that has common features and can be defined by nature or artificial boundaries. So that can be a river, a mountain range, or it could be a fence, okay, or it could be an imaginary line. So it really is something that is an area that has common features. For example, Richland Northeast High School is a region because it has high school students in it, okay? Now let's take a look at those different regions. If you were, this is kind of just an idea of to think about, if you were to label the map of the following regions, where would you divide the country into the regions listed? North, South, East, West, the Midwest, the Pacific, the Northwest, and the Northeast. Take a second and think about that. And if we were to actually talk about what we selected on that map for those divisions, everybody in our classroom would probably have slightly different areas where they would divide the country into these regions. Some people might go strictly upon, borders of states. Others might just circle areas. Others may decide these regions are formed based on cultural perceptions. For example, when I think of the South, I think of iced tea, or I think of people that say y'all, those types of things. And now the South is different than, of course, a geographic direction of South. So some people might look at just the geographic direction of South when they divide the country. And so those types of things come into play whenever we talk about regions. Okay. Now, formal regions are regions that can be formed when you can prove them by data. Okay. Political boundaries, language regions, money, currency. When we can look up a fact and place a boundary around it, that is a formal region. Second region is a functional or nodal region. And most functional or nodal regions have a use, okay? And it has a center, and then it's connected out of the area around them by some form of usually a transportation route. So subways, airports, water systems, water plants, the bus drop off and pickup area at the school. That's a nodal or functional region because all of the buses come in that area, pick up the students, and then go elsewhere. They disperse from that point. The third is something called a perceptual or vernacular region. And this region is based on people's perceptions and people's opinions. There's really no clear boundary for regions, and sometimes stereotypes and attitudes help create that region. And so if you look at the three that I have shown here, I've shown the Bible Belt, the Rust Belt, and the Sun Belt. The Bible Belt is commonly known in the United States as areas where there's high levels of Christianity. And you see the red is kind of a fuzzy at the borders because people basically put the Southeast and a little bit up into the Midwest as part of that. But there is no defined border. The Rust Belt goes across Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. And this is where cars were manufactured early in the mid 20th century. And so lots of factories, lots of manufacturing in this area, lots of rust. Okay. So again, not a defined border. And then finally on the bottom is the Sunshine Belt, which goes all the way across the southern part of the United States. Sunshine Belt is exactly what it means. These are the states that have the most sun throughout the year. And again, they're not precise borders or regions. They're what people have an opinion of. Okay. So for those of you in my AP class, what I want you to do is I want you to review these three types of regions by watching the video that is attached to this in Google Classroom. You're going to stop now, watch that video, and come back to finish up this one. And then finally, just to kind of review, we have the 5 themes of geography. You have location, place, human environment interaction, and movement in regions. Okay, so it's really important that we take a look at these, remember these terms and their interaction or their relation to one another and their relation to the earth. And we will refer back to them a lot during class this year. I came up with a little way for you to remember it. It is Mr. Help. M for movement, R for regions, HE for human environment, L for location, P for place.